Warhammer 40k Darktide may seem like a rather simple game on the surface, but there's a lot that you have to know in order to be successful as you progress and play through the higher difficulties. If you're a new or returning player, then a lot of systems such as Mastery or Crafting or even the endgame game mode Havoc may be pretty confusing for you. Well, this video is going to be a catch-all guide with timestamps so that you can return to it that's going to explain everything that the game has to offer, from things like the game's Curios system all the way to its combat fundamentals. Let's start off with one of the first decisions that you're going to have to make as a new player, which is going to be choosing your class. First up, we have the Veteran, which is going to cater to people who enjoy FPS games. Then we have the Zealot, which is all about getting in and doing as much damage in melee as they possibly can, and then getting out. Then we have the Psyker, which is the game's de facto spellcaster. And then following that, you have the Ogryn, which is the heavy of the game. This is a very slow playstyle that brings a lot of damage and crowd control to the table. After this, you have the game's DLC classes, the Arbitrator and the Hive Scum. Both of these classes have to be purchased, but the Arbitrator is effectively a super tank who has a build that allows you to use a Cyber Mastiff or pet in order to deal with high value targets. And then the Hive Scum is a unique class that focuses on buffing itself or its team. This is a high-risk, high-reward playstyle that I don't necessarily recommend for new players because it requires a certain mastery of the game in order to perform well on. Next up, once you have chosen your class, you go through character customization, and the most important thing to keep in mind when you're going through this is not only are you forming your character's backstory, but choosing certain options will unlock different customization features, such as choosing Cadia as your homeworld for the Veteran will allow you to use 2 different eye colors, and it will also unlock the Cutthroat character or voice for you to try. All of these 3 different options that you have available here are different characters in the game with their own unique voice lines and interactions with the other characters, so it's something that you want to keep in mind. But don't worry, because all of this can be changed in-game later. None of this is permanent, and oh man, what an apt name, Schiller. After this, if you're completely new, then I highly recommend playing the prologue, where it's going to teach you some basic fundamentals about the game's combat, but because we are not new, I'm going to skip the prologue. If you're a new player, then I'm pretty sure that after the prologue, you have to play through the Battle for Tertium campaign, and if you're a returning player, then you have the option to skip the Battle for Tertium campaign. But I don't recommend that you do that, because what this is going to do is it's going to introduce you to every enemy that the game has to throw at you, every one of its supporting systems, and it's also going to tell you the story that the game has to deliver to you as well. Whether you've chosen to participate in the Battle for Tertium or you've decided to skip it, let's go over everything that the mission terminal has to offer. This is located in the center of the Morningstar, or the player hub, and it is effectively how you select which mission you want to play in the game. This terminal presents 5 different difficulties: Uprising, Malice, Heresy, Damnation, and Auric. Auric being the hardest and Uprising being the easiest. In order to unlock each difficulty, you effectively have to complete a certain amount of missions in the prior difficulty. For example, in order to unlock Damnation here, you need to complete a certain amount of Heresy missions. Inside of the mission terminal, there are various mission icons that all mean their own little things. A lot of the icons in the upper left don't necessarily really matter, but what I want you to pay attention to is the experience and resource gains that you're going to be getting from these missions. And the recommendation that I'm going to make to anyone who is leveling up their characters is to either queue quick play, because this is going to give you a bonus to your experience, ordo dockets, plasteel, and diamantium, which are all currencies in order to participate in the crafting system in the game. And it's also going to allow you to experience the most map variety. Otherwise, I also recommend choosing missions that have this double diamond icon, which is going to give you a secondary objective on the map to collect these scriptures that are randomly placed throughout the mission, and collecting these scriptures will award you extra Ordo dockets and extra experience points, and it's a good way to help you explore each of these maps and do a bit more of a deep dive into every mission and really get the most value out of them. Next, I wanted to talk about gearing, because this is a topic that a lot of players get hung up on. When it comes to a lot of these stats, they don't really make too much of a difference between 60% and 80%, but when you're trying to min-max, they really can make the difference. Mobility is typically going to be your dump stat if you're looking to maximize damage, just so that you can maximize your other stats. I know that I'm weird and I have mobility maxed on my knife and on my recon lasgun here, but for the most part, if you're a normal player looking to maximize your damage, then mobility is going to be the stat that you sacrifice. Now, when it comes to Curios, these are all about reducing incoming damage and offering more utility. What you're going to be looking for most classes is going to be 3 toughness Curios, or 2 toughness Curios and a +3 stamina Curio. When it comes to the perks, you want to have toughness on effectively every single Curio. You're also probably, unless your ability cooldown is extremely low, looking for combat ability regeneration. And I have stamina regeneration on my Curios because I like to move around and kite and play this game really, really weird and solo and all this other stuff. But in general gameplay, you actually want to get revive speed, because this is going to help you with all sorts of different actions in game. It's going to promote co-op gameplay, and it's going to make you the most valuable player on your team. Weapons compact with perks and blessings, which become accessible the more you use the weapon through the mastery system, which is effectively just XP but for your weapons. You only gain this by utilizing weapons in missions and also by sacrificing weapons to Hadron. Speaking of Hadron, let's go over the rest of her functionality, as she is very important when it comes to gearing your character. Hadron is located on the right side of the Morningstar, and her menu includes 2 options: Entreat Hadron and Sacrifice Weapons. Whenever you're sacrificing weapons, what you want to do is you want to select the weapon that you want to sacrifice to. Obviously, all of these are maxed for their mastery, except for my double-barreled shotgun, apparently. And you want to select this, and the goal is to select weapons that are of the same type. So if I am sacrificing to the double-barreled shotgun for more experience points for my double-barreled shotgun mastery, then I want to select double-barreled shotguns in order to get the most bang for my buck. And judging by the amount of mastery that I need for the double-barreled shotgun, let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to head over to Brunt's Armory, the NPC who is right across from Hadron, and we are going to access Brunt's Armory instead of requisition weapons and curios. Brunt's Armory is going to allow me to buy basic or regular, or in this case, the game calls it profane, double-barreled shotguns, and I'm going to buy about 3 of them just to show you exactly how this works. I'm going to take these shotguns over to Hadron, and I'm going to entreat Hadron, which is going to allow me to upgrade my weapons or change the perks or blessings that are already on the weapons that I have. In this case, I already like the perks and blessings that I have on my weapons. All I'm doing is I'm consecrating these double-barreled shotguns in order to get them to the redeemed rarity, which is going to allow me to sacrifice them to Hadron to increase my weapon mastery for double-barreled shotguns. Again, you can also just use these weapons in missions, and you will get the same level of mastery, or the same mastery progression anyways. So as you can see, when I select the double-barreled shotgun, it provides a significant amount of XP, and it is going to allow me to get my mastery to 19 out of 20 for this weapon type. I could also do something like sacrifice a plasma gun to the double-barreled shotgun, but as you can see, it doesn't provide as much mastery as if I was going to sacrifice the same type of weapon to Hadron to level up the weapon. So don't do that. It's going to be a waste of your weapons and resources. You really just want to stick to sacrificing the same type of weapon to that weapon family so that you can maximize your mastery gain. And for the most part, it does not matter whether you're sacrificing a redeemed or transcendent weapon. You simply want to match the weapon type to its family. Weapons that are of lower power, so say you're doing this when you are a low level, are not going to provide you as much XP or weapon mastery as you're going to get when you're doing this when your character is maxed out already. And so this is really something you want to take advantage of when your character is level 30. So make sure you're hoarding all of your resources until then so that you can get the most bang for your buck and get the most value for your time. Let's talk about weapon crafting and this game's general gameplay and gearing loop. So after you've gotten an item from the end of a mission, or let's say you find an item at Brunt in his rotating store, which rotates every hour. Let's go through this to see if we could find anything that I would actually pick and enjoy. Here you go. So this shovel has 60% maximum potential mobility, and the rest of the stats are all maxed out at 80%. And this represents what this item can be upgraded to as you level it up. This game doesn't hide anything from you. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up this shovel because it looks like it has great stats. And I'm going to take it back to Hadron, where I'm going to select Entreat Hadron, and I'm going to consecrate the weapon in order to raise its rarity from profane to redeemed to anointed and then to exalted and then to transcendent. And as you can see, every time I raise its rarity, we're unlocking more perks and we're unlocking more blessings on the weapon. These are initially randomly assigned, and let's say I don't like any of these perks or these blessings, I can go over to Refine Item, and I can change the perks to whatever I want, and I can do this for both of them with no limitations, and I can go to Rebless in order to change the blessings on the weapon to whatever blessing I have unlocked through the Mastery system. This is where that weapon XP starts to come into play. The last thing to keep in mind is this weapon's overall power is only 350, and in order to raise all these stats to 80% and my mobility stat to 60%, I need to empower the item. And by holding this to upgrade, I'm going to be utilizing Orthodockets, Plasteel, and Diamantine, which are all found in missions or awarded from completing missions, and this is going to get the power level and thus my stats upgraded. I'm not going to max this out because I don't want to waste the very limited Orthodockets that I already have, but you get the point. So we already talked about Curios, but how do you get better Curios? How do you get the Curios that have the best stats? The way that you're going to do that is by going over to Brunt, I believe is this guy's name, and you're going to go over to the Curio tab inside of the Requisition Weapons and Curios, and this is going to rotate every hour, and these are going to be randomized. Getting the max possible roll of anything in this game is going to be based off of RNG. You're going to have to get lucky, you're going to have to save up your resources, and you're going to have to participate in the various systems that swing RNG in your favor. So you're going to be checking back with the armory every hour on top of the hour whenever it refreshes so that you can maximize your grind, and you're also going to be going to Sire Melk, who is basically right around the corner next to Brunt. Sire Melk is going to have these contracts. These are weeklies that reward this currency. What is this called? I call it Milk Bucks, but it rewards Milk Bucks. Milk Bucks are earned and utilized on these limited time acquisitions, which reset daily. Even though you have the entire week to complete the contract, These limited time acquisitions reset daily, and they also give you access to more curios and generally gear that is already transcendent, so that you could save your upgrade materials, but it may not have the rolls for the stats that you're looking for. For example, if I really liked shock mauls, I would take a look, one look at this roll and be like, oh no, it has 80% mobility. I want 60% mobility. And, you know, I wouldn't buy this. The advantage to this is that the power level of these is all 500, and if you ever wanted to convert milk bucks over to ordo dockets, plasteel, and diamantine, you actually can. If you have a lot of milk bucks and you're not using them for anything, you can go in here and you could go to the limited time acquisitions, you could buy these, and you could simply sacrifice them in order to get a lot of materials. So I can go over to here and just kind of show you. I can unfavorite this by pressing F, or favorite it by pressing F, and I could select X to discard the item. I have that equipped, so it's not going to let me do it. I could do it again, select X to discard the item. I could select my plasma gun, and I can discard it for ordo dockets, plasteel, and diamantine. Obviously, I'm not going to do that. That would be very, very silly. But let's go ahead and refavorite those and keep talking about milk. The other options that you have here are mystery acquisitions and events. Events is how you measure your event progress, and it also shows you what rewards are available for that event. This is a very cool and new feature. But for mystery acquisitions, this is where you gamble your milk bucks. Let's say you're impatient, you have a lot of milk bucks, and you really, really, really want to get the curios that you're looking for. You could just throw all your milk bucks into the unknown defensive curio Gamba, and you could attempt to get the curio roll that you want, whether that be max toughness, a wound curio, max stamina, or even max health. Right across from Sire Milk, you have Sister Hestia, who is effectively the game's achievements or penances person. You don't actually need to go to Hestia when you're in the Morningstar. You can simply press escape and click on penances, and it will automatically navigate you to the NPCs menu. So inside of penances, it will show you the highlights, which are penances that you are close to completing, and of course, every single penance in the game, which are achievements that allow you to unlock all sorts of goodies. For example, for a lot of the class penances, this is how you unlock a lot of the very, very cool looking gear. And they also give you access to penance points, which allow you to unlock things along the reward track here at the bottom. And you can see that I've basically got everything on the reward track unlocked. These offer all sorts of different rewards, from like character portrait frames, which I feel like are very, very weak cosmetic rewards, character stances in your victory screen, to tangible cosmetics that you could unlock for your character that end up looking extremely cool later on, especially as you progress through the penance system. Some of the examples of things that you have to do here are things such as hit 5 enemies with a frag grenade without it bouncing. That's a very unique penance, and it can range all the way to, let's go to one of the worst penances in the game, in my opinion, which is kill 7,500 suppressed enemies while under the effect of coward cooling on the Ogren. This is basically just a grind. So it goes from doing interesting challenges to grinding. Most of the penances you're going to find here are going to be a grind, but I think that it's okay. I think it's okay to have these long-term chases in your game that offer these tangible cosmetic rewards. Penances are a very fun system to participate in. Now that you know about penances, let's talk about the various ways you have as a player to unlock different cosmetics in the game. Of course, you have penances, which will give you access to things such as the Havoc armor, which the veteran Havoc helmet is one of the coolest helmets in the game. This awesome looking chest piece from the Make Every Shot Count penance, and the Havoc leggings, which are all cosmetics that are effectively earned from playing the game a lot or playing the game's endgame mode, Havoc. Additionally, the other option is to go to the Commodore's Vestures from this NPC right here. I forget her name, to be honest, and you could also access her menu effectively through the main menu in the game's interface. And this is where you could spend real money to get really, really cool looking cosmetics. I really hope that the currency Aquillas are farmable in the game one day. Fat Shark, please. The last place to get cosmetics for your character is going to be in the very corner of the Morningstar at the commissary. And this is where you could spend Ordo Dockets once you have plenty of Ordo Dockets to spare on different weapon recolors. They're very basic. They come in the form of this Fire Wastes camo and in the form of this Crucis Nightshade camo. You could take a look at that and see if either of these appeal to you. And you could also get various armor sets that are effectively recolors of the armor that you unlock through the penance system. And these all represent different gear that your character can unlock, and mixing and matching these is generally a really good time, especially if you mix them with the stuff that you can unlock in penances or with the cosmetics from the Commodore's Vestures. In the corner of the Morningstar right next to the commissary, lastly, you're going to have the Barber, which is going to allow you to modify your character's appearance and give you access to the Personality Scourge, which costs 50,000 Ordo Dockets. This is going to allow you to change things like your homeworld and your character's personality. So a lot of those choices that you made when you first created your character can be rectified here. Now that we've talked about all of the important stuff, Darktide, let's get into the actual gameplay of the game. So there are going to be 3 game modes: the Mission Terminal, which we reviewed in an earlier section of the video, and also the Mortis Trials, which are effectively this game's Horde mode. This is accessible from the Psykhanium terminal that is right next to the Mission Terminal, and you would go over here and select Mortis Trials and then select your difficulty. This is a pretty good way of experiencing a lot of the backstory for various characters in this game, as you're going to get access to a lot of different voice lines, and it's also a pretty creative way to experience certain power fantasies for different characters. Pretty fun game mode. Obviously, we've already talked about the Mission Terminal and kind of the base or vanilla game. This is where you're going to be spending probably the majority of your time as you accumulate a lot of experience with this game. And lastly, on the very, very, very right side of the Mission Terminal area, we have Havoc. So Havoc is this game's end game mode, and you can see this season I have not done any Havoc. In fact, I haven't done any Havoc in quite some time, to be honest. And this is a game mode that introduces a lot of different modifiers for the same maps. The maps never change, the missions never change, but what does change is what the game throws at you. And here you can see that we have Contaminated Stims and Heinous Rituals as the map modifiers, and they're effectively going to change the way that the enemies and the mission interact with us. A couple of different options that we have here at the Havoc screen is, if I really wanted to, I could demote the assignment, which will change the map and the modifiers and bring me from the assignment rank 10 to 9, which could be advantageous if you really wanted to do something like just farm really easy Havoc missions to complete the penances, because in order to complete the penances, for example, for the helmet or for the chest piece, I believe you primarily just have to complete or help other people complete Havoc assignments. So if you really wanted to farm, you could totally just group up with a buddy, D-rank to Havoc 1, and just knock the Havoc missions out, help each other out, and get all that completed. In order to actually play Havoc, you can see that your party needs at least 2 members. So you need to hit the you need to have friends. Sorry guys. You need to have friends, or you need to go to the party finder and you need to effectively apply to join groups that are being advertised over here. This is an LFG, or looking for group, in the game. You can also use the party finder in order to find parties for everything else. For example, if I really wanted to, I could deselect Havoc, go back, and just select something like Maelstrom, but as you can see, there are no parties here, or Adventure, which is apparently also dead, or even Mortis Trials, which is also dead. People realistically only use the party finder for Havoc. That's it. And you can list your own party. So if you really wanted to use the looking for group to try to find people to do Mortis Trials with, You can certainly try. The last thing that I'll say about Havoc is you certainly want to complete this on a weekly basis if you can, because the rewards are amazing. If you complete just one Havoc 20 or higher every week, then you get a significant amount of Ordo Dockets, Plasteel, and Diamantine at the end of the week. This is really valuable when you are gearing your character and working through all the masteries and experimenting with the different items that the game has to offer. And I highly recommend that you suck it up, try to find a group, and really try to get into Havoc, even if you're just doing the lower Havoc levels, 10, 20, 30, whatever. And then of course, if you can do 40, then the game is going to reward you for completing a 40 every single week. Now that you know about the game's various game modes, I'm going to show you where you could train or practice your combat skills. Is that a Sister of Battle? That's actually pretty cool. I really like this this setup and the cosmetic that they chose to go with this. Good job, Aster. Good job. But in the corner of the Morning Star, you're going to have the Psykhanium, and this is where we're going to do all of our combat training. In the Psykhanium, of course, you can choose Mortis Trials, or we can select any one of the various training options. Basic training is something that everyone goes through, and additional training is something that I highly recommend, especially if you are a returning player who's looking to get a better grasp of the fundamentals. But for the purpose of this, we're going to go ahead and select the Meat Grinder and Arc difficulty so that we can practice against various enemies. So inside of the Psykhanium's Meat Grinder, none of these enemies are actually going to attack you, but this is a very good place to practice what combos your weapons are going to do and what damage they're going to do to the various enemy types. For example, I'm using the Combat Blade, and this weapon generally does good against all armor types, but depending on how I use it, it can be quite bad. So if I go up to this Crusher and I just use my light attacks, it's not going to do much here. I'm just hitting it in the body here. This weapon is not designed to hit carapace armor with this particular move. But if I aim for the head and I do a push attack, you can see it's significantly more damage. And because of the way that I have my knife set up here, it's going to do quite a bit of damage when I apply all of the things from my build to my combos, and you can see that this enemy becomes relatively easy to deal with simply because of my character build, but also because of knowledge of the game's melee combat system. Understanding of combos and your weapon is really, really important. Oh my god, I got the knife spin. Whoa, that's cool. Whenever you do the inspect key, the X key in my case, you have a really small chance of getting this inspect animation. I can't believe that I got that on the first take. That's awesome. But like I said, understanding melee combos is extremely important, because whenever I go over to these horde-like enemies, spamming left click is actually quite effective. But for a lot of you guys who have a very keen eye, one thing you're immediately going to notice is I'm only able to hit 2 enemies at a time with a single left click. I should hit these 3 or possibly even 4 enemies with a left click, but I'm only going to hit 2. And why is that? Well, the reason is because different attacks have different cleave values. If I do a heavy attack, I hit all 3. And so it's really important to understand which attacks on your weapon are going to be used in various situations. For this variant of the Combat Blade, one of the best single target rotations is effectively just to spam push attacks. If I wanted to do a survival, just spam into a horde, I can do just left clicks. And if I really wanted to cleave into a horde, and let's say if there were mixed armored enemies, then I can do these heavy attacks, which are going to allow me to cleave through many enemies at a time. Next, let's explain ranged mechanics to you, just so that you understand what you're getting yourself into whenever you start using your ranged weapons. And in this case, I'm going to be using the Recon Last Gun, And the first thing I want to go over is suppression. So if I shoot by these enemies, you can see that they start to freak out, they're running for cover, they're retreating. That is the game's suppression mechanic. This applies for effectively every single ranged weapon in the game. Typically, if you have a weapon that launches things like bolters or bigger explosives, your suppression values are much higher, and this is really important as you progress through the game, as it explains why a lot of enemies aren't shooting at you whenever you're shooting at them. And it's something to keep in mind if you ever want to provide covering fire for your team. Obviously, you're going to be aiming for enemies, but it's really good to understand that the other enemies that are around the target that you're shooting are gonna be suppressed. But why aren't these other two enemies reacting? What's going on here? Well, melee enemies and specialist type enemies traditionally don't react whenever you are shooting in their general direction to try to suppress them. Now, this is considered a gunner, right? The scab plasma gunner. But it's not necessarily a gunner in the traditional sense. The scab plasma gunner does not care about suppression, and he doesn't care about the other laws of the game. Alright, so certain weapons are going to be used to deal damage to enemies in various ways. The recon lasgun, for example, doesn't really do great damage against carapace armor, but if I shoot this enemy in the chest, he takes a lot of damage, and I actually kill him quite fast. Why is that? It's simply because of armor types. The Scab Plasma Gunner has a carapace head, a flak chest piece, but then unarmored arms. There you go. I got it to proc. You can see the damage type basically procking whenever my last round actually hits him in the arm, and then it switches back to flak armored because the rest of the enemy, the majority of the enemy, is covered in flak and they're taking burn damage from my recon lasgun's blessing. But what this inherently means is something like the recon lasgun is just not good at dealing with a enemy like a crusher, right? I can't really do anything to the crusher here unless I were to change up my build. But that's why I have a varied build. That's why I have the combat knife. I can effectively deal with the crusher in just a couple of hits here with my combat knife. You could utilize your blitz or your other abilities to effectively get the same result, but what you want to keep in mind whenever you're playing this game and you are setting up your character's build is you generally want to be able to deal with everything that you have here in the Psykhanium. If your build can't clear hordes of enemies effectively, and your build can't clear things like carapace armor effectively, then you have weaknesses in your build that you need to address, just in case you're playing in a mission and your entire team goes down. You need to be able to save them, you need to be able to play the game by yourself. Alright, now that you understand that, let's go ahead and quickly interject and talk about builds. So if you wanted to create a build, you head over to your inventory, and in the loadout screen, you can hit this plus icon in the corner in order to basically create a template for your build. We're going to go ahead and delete this one because we already have our Recon Lasgun Veteran build set up. This is a pretty typical Recon Lasgun build, and I've got every element of combat addressed in this build in some way. For example, I use the Combat Blade, which is kind of a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none, very fast weapon that isn't quite the best at horde clear, isn't quite the best at single target damage, but it does the job and it makes me a very, very fast boy. I'm building around the Recon Lasgun just because I like the weapon, not necessarily because it's the best weapon in the game. I think it's a very, very good, balanced weapon. I really like the playstyle of basically applying burn stacks to enemies and then going in and finishing enemies off with the Combat Blade, or just using the Recon Lasgun the entire game, because with this build you effectively never run out of ammo. You've got my Curios, which if you want to review that, go back to the Curio section, and then we have talents. Talents are really important in this game, and a lot of your build is effectively going to come down to player experience and what you're doing, what game mode you're playing. This build is kind of my go-to for whenever I'm doing solos. In order to do solos, you need to have the True Solo mod. but it's also my go-to just in general Auric gameplay whenever I want to use the Recon Lasgun. The core passives for this build are going to be things like Shock Trooper and Reciprocity, because every time I crit with a last weapon, it consumes no ammo, which having more ammo on the veteran is great, and Reciprocity just simply gives me more crit, and so I'm able to take advantage of Shock Trooper more. But then we have all the other aspects of the build, such as our Blitz. In this case, I'm using Shredder Frag Grenade. I also really like Crack Grenade. This is a really good way of dealing with bosses and armored enemies. And then also you have the Aura. Survivalist is effectively just the best aura on the veteran because it allows you to replenish ammo. And then you have your abilities. I really like Voice of Command, provides just quick, on-demand crowd control, replenishes your toughness, and then it also gives you what's called Golden Toughness, which allows you to mitigate a ton of damage. And then lastly, you have your Keystone. Some classes actually have multiple Keystones. For the veteran, you only have 3 different choices. I really like Focus Target because it basically makes me a team player and allows me to mark targets to increase my damage to them and everybody else's damage to them as well. It is really, really fun to use. Okay, for this very last part of the video, I have swapped over to my Zealot so that I can give you some very general combat tips and tricks. This is my Shroud Field Martyrdom build. I have a short that reviews everything that I take with it. Let's dive right into it. The one thing that I want you to leave this video with is blocking and dodging are OP. This is how you're going to survive in every single one of your lobbies. You don't even necessarily need to completely master your timing for dodging. You just need to master and understand spacing. But this is going to allow you to mitigate damage. It's going to keep you alive in all of your games. If you're having trouble in all your games, block and dodge more. I'm gonna spawn a lot more enemies, right? And all we're gonna do is we're just gonna dodge backwards and we're just gonna keep blocking. You can see that it's reducing my stamina, but it's not reducing my toughness at all. And then I'm gonna go ahead and push. I'm gonna start clearing these enemies. We're gonna power up our sword here. For the Relic Blade, the Horde Clear combo is push attack, left click, and boom. We dealt with them, we didn't take any damage, we lost a little bit of stamina, but that recovered almost immediately. Next, I'm going to show you gunners. So let's go ahead and spawn kind of your basic gunner. I think Cultist Assault will do. And you can see blocking will not do anything here. This is bleeding through my stamina, and I'm taking toughness damage. I have to dodge the bullets, which, you know, we're in the Matrix now. You can just dodge bullets by sliding back and forth. I can slide towards the enemy. They can't do anything. When I get close enough, they pull out their melee weapon. I'm going to push them away so they pull their gun out, or I can dodge. The visual cue for this is their gun is going to light up, and then you hit the dodge button as soon as you see it light up. It's the same visual cue for every single type of gunner enemy in the game. We'll go ahead and clear this guy out and go through our list of specials. Next, we have our specials. Each of them is dealt with differently. The most important ones, and the ones that I see a lot of people dying to, are your disablers. People don't understand how to deal with disablers, so let's go ahead and cover that, starting with the Chaos Hound. If I spawn the Chaos Hound in, there are 2 ways I can deal with this. I could do a push, which will effectively knock the dog out of the air when it's leaping at me, or I can dodge the attack. It's much more reliable to do the push and not to rely on the dodge, because the dodge isn't going to work all the time, especially when you are connected to another player or a host who has bad connection with you. So you really want to rely on the push. And this game is very generous. You can see that I'm not pushing as the dog is like landing right on top of me. I'm pushing much earlier. Then I can easily kill the dog with my melee weapon. Next, let's go ahead and spawn our next special, which is going to be the Mutant. So with the Mutant, you have to dodge them. You cannot block them. You cannot push them. You have to dodge them in order to avoid their grab. Getting grabbed by a mutant could mean death. and I highly recommend using a melee weapon in order to deal with them. They generally take less ranged damage. And the final disabler that I want to talk about is gonna be the Trapper. Let's see if I could find them in this list here. They're called Net Gunner. Gross. So the Trapper, you basically just have to dodge the net. You can't block it, you can't push it, you have to dodge it. It's going to run away after it launches a net at you, and Trappers are probably the #1 reason, right next to Pox Bombers or Pox Walkers, which we're going to go through next. Let me go ahead and navigate to them while I dodge this Trapper a little bit. People typically deal with Trappers by shooting them or by killing them with some ranged option. Okay, so the last special that I want you to know how to deal with is going to be the Poxwalker Bomber, which is going to be a suicide bomber that is going to effectively just charge you and your team, and there are 2 ways to deal with it. You could either kill them from far away as they're charging you by, as a zealot, throwing knives at them perhaps, or by pulling out your gun and shooting them. This is a very dangerous option, and I want you to make sure that whenever you're doing this, none of your teammates are standing by the Poxwalker Bomber. If you see the Poxwalker Bomber is too close to your teammates, don't shoot it, just let your teammate push it. One thing that you'll notice about this game is the push is actually 360 degrees. So let's say the Poxwalker Bomber is coming from my right, and I hear it, I can actually just push it, and you can see I didn't even push the enemy, but it still got pushed backwards over to my right. And in game, especially if you're on console, you're not going to see the circle around the Poxwalker Bomber. You're just not. This is actually provided via a mod. It is a very, very good accessibility and visualization tool, and it helps you do things like this. Otherwise, you're gonna have to rely on things like the sound cues, which for the Poxwalker Bombers are generally pretty good. They generally don't bug out, which is another thing that you have to worry about for these enemies. The Poxwalker Bomber is probably the cause of most group wipes. I would say bosses and specials are the causes of most group wipes, so it's important that you understand how to deal with all of them. As a little bonus here, I want to show you guys what this looks like when everything comes together. So I'm going to go ahead and spawn a Chaos Spawn and allow it to do a little bit of damage to me. I want to try to avoid the grab attack so that we don't get stuck in something, but now everything is activated for my Martyrdom build here. And because I know about the game and I've kind of pre-planned everything, I can do things like that, where we effectively nearly one-shot it. And traditionally, you can see the amount of damage that we're doing to the Chaos Spawn is relatively weak, but because of the way that I have everything set up, we're able to do a phenomenal combo like the one that I just pulled off. Let's go ahead and dodge here. Do it again, boom, one shot because of the synergies that I've combined with the build. And that's kind of the power of knowledge and understanding in this game, and one of the reasons why you want to learn a lot about the game. It's just extremely satisfying. It really pays off. Anyways, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you're a new player, I hope that I was able to teach you something about this game, and if you're a veteran player, go ahead and do me a favor, and if you have any corrections that need to be made, or if you don't like the way that I presented something, or you feel like a new player should know something about the game that you wish that you had known when you started Darktide, go ahead and post that advice in the comments below. As always, this has been Jeffficus, and I'll see you in-game. The Emperor protects.